Have you ever, tried to describe the exact feeling of being completely, just overwhelmingly in love, and you find that regular, everyday words just kind of fall flat?
Oh, yeah. It is, it's sort of the eternal human problem, really.
Right, because you know the feeling. You're trying to explain to a friend that, I don't know, your heart is racing, the whole world looks fundamentally different, and you feel like you're vibrating with electricity.
Exactly.
But when you try to actually articulate it, all that comes out of your mouth is something painfully inadequate, like, yeah, I really like them.
Right, because the sheer terrifying scale of that emotion, it just completely overpowers our standard vocabulary. I mean, when literal language fails us, we really have no choice but to turn to the figurative.
Yeah, we turn to metaphor,
We turn to poetry, exactly.
which is exactly why we are jumping right into today's source stack. So welcome back to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Today we're taking you on a journey through one of the most profound, layered, and honestly historically fascinating texts we have ever covered here. We're looking at the complete Hebrew-English text of the Song of Songs, so chapters 1 through 8.
It's an incredible piece of literature.
It really is. And our mission today is to sort of unpack these ancient, incredibly vivid poetic similes. We want to explore how this text masterfully connects the wildness of the natural world with, you know, that completely overwhelming experience of human love we were just talking about.
And, what immediately stands out is how the text signals its own importance right from the very first line.
Right in the title.
Yeah. If you look at the original Hebrew source, the title is Shir Hashirim, which in English, that translates literally to the Song of Songs.
Okay, let's pause there for a second because I know from my notes that that's not just a repetitive title, right? It's a very specific kind of grammatical structure.
Precisely. In Hebrew syntax, this construct state functions as a superlative.
So it means like the most.
Right. It is a way of expressing the absolute, unrivaled greatest version of a thing. You see it in other ancient phrases like King of Kings or the Holy of Holies in the temple. So by naming itself Shir Hashemem, the text is essentially planting a flag right out of the gate.
It's declaring itself the ultimate song.
Exactly. The greatest song ever written about the greatest subject a human being can experience.
The ultimate song. I mean, that is a massive claim to make.
It's a bold way to start.
And to really figure out if it earns that title, we need to trace the chronological flow of this text. And one thing I noticed, which is fascinating, even though this is an ancient Middle Eastern poem, the emotional journey maps remarkably well onto a classic East Asian narrative structure.
Well, the four-act arc?
Yeah, Kishten-ketsu, or the Ji, Sheng, Jian, and Giel structure.
I think it's a brilliant framework to apply here. It really just proves that the emotional architecture of falling in love is truly a universal human experience.
Right, it translates to an introduction, a development, a dramatic turn, and a conclusion. So we're going to start with the raw initial ache of longing in that Gi phase.
The beginning.
Then move through the immersive blossoming of love, hit this sudden, agonizing period of separation, and finally arrive at a fierce, unbreakable union.
So let's start at that beginning, the G or the introduction.
Yes,
Yes.
chapter 1. And it absolutely refuses to ease you in. I mean, it drops you right into the deep end of desire and that total loss of self that comes with a new infatuation.
It's very immediate.
Verse 2 begins with this incredible, immediate sensory rush. It says, "Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for thy love is better than wine."
It's an entirely immersive experience right from the start. It establishes immediately that we are not dealing with some, polite, abstract philosophy of love here.
Oh, definitely not polite.
No, this is intense physical, emotional yearning. I mean, the poet activates the senses of taste and smell right away. There's wine, the fragrance of goodly oils, ointment poured forth.
Right, the sensory details are everywhere.
Because the physical body and the emotional state are inextricably linked in this text.
But what's really interesting is that amidst all this intoxicating sensory language, we hit a fascinating metaphor in chapter 1, verse 6.
The vineyard metaphor.
Yes. So the protagonist is talking about how the sun has tanned her because her brothers made her work outside. And she says, "They made me keeper of the vineyards, but mine own vineyard have I not kept."
Such a famous line.
And I read that and it just clicked instantly for me.
How so? like in a modern context.
Yes, it's just so deeply relatable. I look at neglecting the vineyard and I instantly think of the modern experience of getting into a brand new, all-consuming relationship.
Oh, the honeymoon phase.
Exactly. You meet someone, you fall head over heels, and suddenly you forget to water your actual houseplants. You completely abandon your Wednesday night pottery class. You haven't texted your best friends back in a week.
Right, you disappear into the other person.
You let your own personal garden overgrow because you are just entirely consumed by the existence of this other person. You are neglecting your own vineyard.
That's a great analogy. And there's a historical layer to that metaphor that makes your point even sharper, actually.
Really, like the agricultural aspect.
Yeah. In the ancient agricultural world, your vineyard wasn't just a hobby. It wasn't a pottery class.
Right.
It was your livelihood. It was quite literally your sustenance. So the poet, using agricultural responsibilities to symbolize the maintenance of one's personal life, boundaries, and independent identity, it carries massive weight.
Oh, wow.
Neglecting it is a genuine existential risk. The protagonist is basically saying that the sheer force of this love has made her abandon the structures that kept her safe and independent.
She's completely lost in the gravity of the other person. She even asks, verse 7, "Tell me, O thou whom my soul loveth, where thou feedest." It's just pure, unadulterated yearning.
And notice how the text establishes a foundational link between love and the natural landscape right from the start.
Right, she's asking about his flocks.
She doesn't ask what he's thinking. She asks where he is pasturing his flock. The inner emotional life and the outer agricultural world are perfectly mirrored.
But catching that initial spark isn't the whole story. Like, eventually, a relationship has to grow.
Yes, it has to move forward.
And that transition brings us beautifully to the Sheng, or the development phase of the narrative arc. So from that initial overwhelming longing, the relationship starts to blossom.
And the natural imagery used to describe it absolutely explodes here. Love isn't just a sudden desire anymore. It becomes a complete immersive environment.
We see this vividly in chapter 2, right? The season officially shifts. It says, "The winter is past, the rain is over and gone, the flowers appear on the earth."
The springtime of the relationship.
Yeah, and the lover arrives so dynamically, leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. And verse 9 compares him to a gazelle or a young hart.
Which is a beautiful image of vitality.
And the gazelle metaphor, I completely understand. It's energetic, it's graceful, majestic. But wait, hold on. I'm looking at my notes for chapter 4, and we really need to pause here because I have some questions.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the protagonist is describing her lover's features, and she compares hair to a, quote, flock of goats that trail down from Mount Gilead.
Ah, yes.
And then in verse 2, she says, "Teeth are like a flock of ewes, whereof all are paired, and none faileth among them."
The famous sheep teeth.
Right. Let me just be brutally honest. If I was on a date and someone told me my hair reminded them of a bunch of goats and my teeth look like sheep, I would probably ask for the check and leave.
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
How is this considered the pinnacle of romantic poetry?
It's a completely fair reaction, and I think it's the perfect example of why we have to translate not just the words, but the cultural context.
Okay, help me out here.
We have to step out of our modern concrete cityscapes and place ourselves on the ancient pastoral hillsides of the Near East.
Okay, I'm trying. Paint the picture for me. How do goats equal great hair?
Well, think about the geography of Mount Gilead. It's a rugged, majestic landscape. Now, imagine standing at the bottom of that mountain and looking up.
Okay.
You see a massive flock of black goats moving down the slopes in the distance. The poet isn't saying the hair feels like a goat or, smells like one.
Thank goodness.
It's about the visual impact of the flock from a distance. It evokes this cascading, rippling, collective movement.
Oh, I see.
It's abundant, it's wild, and it's dynamic. It's the ancient equivalent of seeing thick, dark hair flowing and shifting in the wind.
Oh, wow. Okay, when you describe it as a rippling, cascading movement on a mountainside, that actually is a breathtaking visual. It's almost cinematic.
Exactly.
But you're going to have to work a lot harder to sell me on the sheep teeth. I'm sorry.
I could do that.
Yeah.
Picture a flock of freshly washed ewes coming up from the water. They are gleaming white against the landscape.
Okay, white teeth. I get that.
But the text specifically emphasizes, "Whereof all are paired, and none faileth among them." Now, in the ancient world, before modern dentistry, having a perfectly straight, completely full set of brilliantly white teeth without a single one missing was incredibly rare.
Oh, right, because they didn't have braces or, good dental care.
Exactly. It was a tremendous sign of flawless health, vitality, and youth.
So it's not about looking physically like a sheep. It's a metaphor for perfect symmetry, wholeness, and health.
Right.
It's basically ancient orthodontics poetry.
That's a great way to put it. It's the highest compliment you could give regarding someone's physical vitality.
Okay, I buy it. I buy it.
And while we are analyzing the animal imagery in this development phase, we really have to look at a crucial, highly symbolic animal mentioned back in chapter 2, verse 15.
Right, the foxes. The text says, "Take us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vineyards, for our vineyards are in blossom."
The little foxes. This is one of the most famous lines in the entire text.
Yeah, so if the blossoming vineyard represents this beautiful, fragile, new relationship they are building, what are the foxes?
Well, to understand the foxes, you have to know a little bit about viticulture, the cultivation of grapes.
Fair.
Foxes don't just jump up and eat the ripe fruit off the vine. They are burrowers.
Ah.
They dig around the base of the vines, gnawing at the roots and literally destroying the foundational structure of the plant itself.
Oh, wow, that completely changes the metaphor. They aren't just like stealing a little joy or eating some grapes. They are threatening the survival of the relationship.
Precisely. If we apply that through a modern psychological lens, the little foxes are the fundamental threats to a fragile new love.
Like what exactly?
They are the deeply rooted insecurities, the unspoken resentments, the tiny miscommunications, or even external societal pressures that sneak in and chew at the foundation of the relationship.
That makes so much sense.
The poet is saying, our love is blooming, it's beautiful, but we have to actively, constantly protect it from these creeping, destructive habits.
So we have to catch those little misunderstandings before they kill the root of what we're building. That is incredibly profound.
It really is.
But, catching those little foxes isn't always enough, is it? I mean, inevitably, the initial springtime euphoria wears off. The reality of the other person's boundaries sets in.
Yes.
And that brings us to the dramatic turn in our narrative arc. Because if love is real, it's also terrifying.
Yes. The poem shifts from a sunlit, blooming romance into something much darker and much more psychologically complex.
It's a very noticeable shift.
The text takes a sharp turn away from the safety of the mountains into a space of deep vulnerability, anxiety, and just the painful shifting tides of human emotion.
We see this dramatically in Chapter 3, and then it really peaks in Chapter 5. The setting completely changes. We leave the bright countryside and enter the dark, dangerous city at night.
The imagery gets very intense here.
Chapter 3 starts with a haunting line. "By night on my bed I sought him whom my soul loveth. I sought him, but I found him not."
The emotional landscape completely fragments here. I mean, look at the contrast. Earlier, in Chapter 4, love was described as a garden shut up and a fountain sealed.
Right. It was private, safe.
Entirely protected from the outside world. But in the turn, those safe boundaries are shattered. The illusion of perfect safety is just gone.
And the psychological realism of how that happens in Chapter 5 is staggering to me. It's so visceral. The protagonist is in bed, and the text says, "I sleep, but my heart waketh."
Such a powerful phrase.
That half-awake state of longing is so perfectly captured. But then the lover knocks on the door. He's outside in the cold night. His hair is wet with dew, and he asks her to open the door.
And this is the turning point.
Right, because she hesitates. She actually stops and makes excuses. She says, "I have put off my coat. How shall I put it on? I have washed my feet. How shall I defile them?"
It is a masterful, timeless depiction of human complexity. I mean, why does she hesitate when the thing she wants most in the world is standing right at her door?
Because opening that door means stepping out of her own comfort zone. I mean, it's self-sabotage driven by the fear of full vulnerability.
Exactly.
It's that terrifying moment in a relationship where you suddenly realize exactly how much power the other person has to destroy you. And so you pull back to protect yourself, even just for a second.
And that momentary pullback has devastating consequences in the poem.
Right, because she waits too long.
Yes.
Yeah.
By the time she overcomes her fear, by the time she gets out of bed, and the text notes her hands are literally dripping with precious, bitter-smelling myrrh onto the handles of the lock. She finally opens the door, and the reality of her hesitation hits. He is gone.
My beloved had turned away and was gone. It's a total gut punch.
It really is.
And she's left standing there, her hands covered in this incredibly valuable perfume, but she's completely alone.
And that realization launches her into a frantic, desperate search.
Yeah.
This is the true agony of absence we're seeing.
She goes out into the city.
She abandons all her previous boundaries, going out into the dangerous city streets at night. And it doesn't go well for her.
No, it doesn't. Chapter 5, verse 7 tells us she is found by the watchmen who patrolled the city walls. And The text says, "They smote me, they wounded me, the keepers of the walls took away my mantle from me."
It's a brutal scene.
This scene feels incredibly violent and jarring compared to the pastoral beauty of the earlier chapters. Why did the poet include this physical assault by the watchmen?
Well, the Watchmen represent the harsh, rigid structures of society. Symbolically, this scene captures the sheer emotional agony and the intense societal exposure of being deeply, painfully in love and separated from the one you love.
Oh, I see. So it's like about being exposed.
Taking away her mantle, her outer garment, strips her of her dignity, her identity, and her protection. She is completely, dangerously exposed. She is forced to tell the daughters of Jerusalem, "If ye find my beloved, what will ye tell him? I am lovesick."
It's a raw public desperation. The safe, sealed garden from the earlier chapters has been completely violated by the reality of absence and the pain of human disconnect. I mean, it's the darkest night of the soul.
But going through that dark night is entirely necessary. You really cannot reach profound, mature love without surviving the terror of vulnerability and separation.
Which carries us perfectly to the final, most transcendent part of our journey, the Geol, the conclusion.
Yes.
Surviving the agony of the city brings the text to its philosophical and emotional climax, resolving this incredible narrative arc into a brilliant, unbreakable union.
And this is truly the ultimate intellectual and emotional peak of the text.
It really feels like it.
Having journeyed through the initial spark, the blooming of spring, and the terrifying darkness of the turn, the poetry elevates human connection from a simple emotion to an unstoppable elemental force of nature.
I want to read the climax directly from chapter 8, verse 6, because I honestly don't think human language has ever captured the weight of commitment better than this.
Go for it.
She says, "Set me as a seal upon thy heart, as a seal upon thine arm, for love is strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The flashes thereof are flashes of fire, a very flame of the Lord."
It's just breathtaking. And to really grasp the magnitude of that verse, we have to understand what a seal was in the ancient Near East.
Okay, what was it? Because it wasn't just a wax stamp on an envelope, right?
No, not at all. A cylinder seal was your absolute legal identity. It was uniquely carved stone, usually worn on a cord around the neck, resting over the heart, or tied around the wrist on the arm.
Over the heart or on the arm, just like the verse says.
Exactly. You would press it into clay to sign contracts, transfer property, or issue decrees.
Oh, that is a massive insight. So when she says, "set me as a seal," she's not just saying, "hug me close." She's saying, "make me your legal binding identity."
Yes, she is asking to be the binding force over his inner will, the heart, and his outward actions, the arm. It is a demand for total, permanent integration. And look at the comparison she uses to justify it. Love is strong as death. Death is the one absolute, unyielding certainty of the natural world. It is the ultimate force that conquers all humans, and the poet places love right alongside it as its equal.
It is wild, raw, and completely elemental. The next verse says, "Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. You cannot drown it. You cannot burn it out. It just exists as an unyielding force of nature."
And the artistic value peaks here by showing that this kind of love, having been tested in the fire of separation, cannot be quantified, bought, or negotiated.
Right.
The verse continues, "If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, he would utterly be contemned," meaning he would be mocked or despised. You cannot buy the Song of Songs. It exists entirely outside the realm of commerce, logic, and transaction.
It's beautiful. And looking back at how this chronological narrative wraps up, the evolution of the protagonist's emotional state is so clear.
It really is a complete transformation.
Think about how the story began. In the introduction, the Gi phase, she was almost passive in her overwhelming desire. She pleaded in chapter 1, "Draw me, we will run after thee." She was asking to be swept away, almost like a victim of her own feelings.
She was entirely reacting to the sheer disorienting force of the emotion.
But then, after the development, after surviving the root-digging little foxes, after enduring the terrifying vulnerability of the dark city and finding each other again, look at how the entire poem ends in chapter 8, verse 14.
A completely different tone.
Exactly. She doesn't ask to be drawn away anymore. She extends a mutual, joyous invitation. "Make haste, my beloved, and be thou like to a gazelle or to a young hart upon the mountains of spices."
Beautiful.
The anxious, passive yearning has evolved into a confident, dynamic, equal partnership. They are running on the mountains together.
It perfectly concludes the Gisheng Jiangyal structure. We've witnessed the complete journey. From the internal loss of self through the paralyzing fear of vulnerability to a fully realized, mature, and unbreakable union.
So let's take a step back and look at the massive ground we've covered
I've
today.
heard a lot.
We really have. We started with an intoxicating kiss and the existential risk of a neglected personal vineyard. We walked through a springtime explosion of cascading gazelles and learned that sheep teeth were actually ancient complements on health and symmetry.
Ancient orthodontics.
Right. We survived a terrifying, vulnerable search in a dark city, losing our protective mantle to the rigid structures of society. And finally, we arrived at the profound realization that true, tested love is an unquenchable fire, a binding legal and emotional seal as strong and inevitable as death itself.
But I think the most important takeaway for anyone listening is that while the specific vocabulary of this text, it's, the flowing myrrh, the cylinder seals, the flocks of black goats on Mount Gilead that belongs entirely to the ancient pastoral world, but the emotional roller coaster it describes is entirely modern. The dizzying highs of a new infatuation, the terrifying hesitations of opening your heart to someone who holds the power to hurt you, and the deep, abiding craving for a connection that outlasts the floods. None of that has changed in thousands of years.
It really hasn't. We just trade the ancient watchmen for modern anxieties and the literal vineyards for our daily routines. The human heart is exactly the same, which is what makes this truly the ultimate song.
I couldn't agree more.
Which brings me to one final thought for you to take away today. Think back to that incredible metaphor of the vineyard and the little foxes from chapter 2. If your own vineyard represents your inner life, your boundaries, your fragile relationships, and the things you hold most precious, what little foxes are currently wandering through your daily life?
That's a great question.
Are you letting tiny distractions, unspoken resentments, or minor insecurities quietly dig at the roots of your joy? And more importantly, are you letting the fear of those little foxes keep you from experiencing the kind of all-consuming passion, whether for a person, a life's work, or a profound purpose that burns as fiercely as the love described in this ancient, magnificent song?